Andrea Wilcutt. Girl, welcome to this kitchen table conversation.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy you raised your hand. I have to share with our listeners how we came into each other's life because I think it's so powerful in the rooms you stand in and the courage to raise your hand. Do you remember how we came into each other's life and how this podcast conversation came to be?
I do, and it was very out of the ordinary for me, and I'm really excited about it.
So Andrea and I were at this amazing women in hospitality event in Michigan. Oh my God, the energy in that it
So
was
amazing.
right. The energy in that room was palpable. I remember it like it was yesterday.
I want to live it like once a week just to be uplifted by all of these amazing, powerful women. It was
There really
so
is.
uplifting.
Isn't there something powerful about when you get in a room, like who you stand beside matters, online and offline?
Hmm. Hmm.
And you reached out to me afterwards. You were on a panel talking about women in leadership, and you had sent me this amazing note on Instagram that
Hmm.
said, "Hey, I want to be on your podcast because I want to talk to women that are mamas that want to be leaders and want to grow their career, and I want to share my story." And I thought,
Yes.
damn, what a power move to the courage to raise your hand and
Hmm.
ask. Have you always been that way?
No, no, actually quite the opposite. I would say I've always been a confident person,
Mm,
but it was very out of the ordinary for me to just reach out and say, "Hey, I have a thought." And, a goal I set for myself last year and even going into this year is just to connect with other people more
mm,
in general and women especially and hear about, hear from people that are living in my shoes. We go through this day to day of just always feeling so alone. And it doesn't have to
mm.
be that way. There's so many people that are living the same lives that we are. And I said, I really want to connect with people more. And that conference was the perfect opportunity. And, when I got asked to speak on the panel, I was given a question that really stood out to me. And I was
Mhm.
excited to kind of take ownership of this working mother question. And we unfortunately ran out of time. And it just really stuck with me. And that's what kind of, made me reach out to you to just say, hey, I think we're missing a piece of the puzzle here because a lot of the women in this room are working mothers, which kind of adds another layer to everything we deal with. So
Yeah.
thank you for being so willing to talk to me about this today.
And Andrea, do you remember what the question was?
I do. It was, how has motherhood affected the way that you lead and show up in your career?
Ooh. Ooh, that's a power one.
Yes.
And how would you answer that, my girl?
Well, I would say that prior to becoming a mom, I was very much like you and what you
Mm,
always talk about, which is running yourself into the ground to
mm,
have that badge of honor and to outwork everybody. I worked more hours than
mm.
anyone else. I took a lot of pride in being the hardest working person and, probably left work crying way too many times in my life. And that was what fulfilled me. And it was actually not fulfilling me at the same time. It was actually making me feel very empty. So when I became a mom, I knew going into it when I found out we were having a baby that everything was going to have to change.
Mm.
That, I couldn't lead this life of working tirelessly with a baby at home. And so I would say the way that it's affected the way that I lead is really to learn that I have to count on my team. I have to delegate. I have to ask for help. And I have to provide my team with the tools to succeed so that they can help me, so that I'm not taking everything on myself and being okay accepting help. I know that's something you talk about a lot is just asking for help when it's needed. And I've really had to learn to do that becoming a mother. So that's probably been the biggest change. And then the way that I've showed up in my career differently is I really have to utilize the time that I have when I'm here
Mm,
and try to make this time as productive as possible because I can't go home and work. And that's what I used to do.
mhm,
I would leave work and then I would go home and work more until
mhm,
10, 11 o'clock at night. It's all I did. So, I can't do that anymore. My kids won't allow that. So I think just being okay with the fact that it might take me 24 to 48 hours to reply to an email,
mhm,
not 5 minutes,
mhm.
and that I have this other life outside of the workplace that I have to tend to. So I think those are probably the biggest things that, changes that I've experienced with being a mother in leadership.
I really want to unpack. You were taking me to church, girl, with the asking for help. It is something I've been doing this shit after my breakdown for 8 years, and I still struggle with asking for help. I'm
Yeah.
like, I got it. I'm fine. And isn't it funny how you think you are, and then it comes out in the worst moments, whether you're flipping out on your husband or the team or the email just sets you over the edge. And I would love to hear from you. What's some tangibility around the asking for help that you do, whether that's with your team or with your partner? For example, I have found, Andrea, for me, I was underutilizing my husband. Michael has this beautiful viewpoint on things that when
Mhm.
I share something with him, for instance, the other week, Andrea, we were in the car. I was struggling with this conversation for days, girl, days. I had
Mhm.
myself all wrapped up around what this conversation was. And then I said to him, hey, can I get your viewpoint on it? And in 5 minutes, Andrea, he was able to give me an entirely different lens on a situation. And I felt so much freer. So, what does
Wow.
that look like for you in the asking for help?
As far as the tangibility goes, I would say really to me it's come down to understanding the things that don't necessarily need to be my responsibility. I,
Mm,
I'm such a people pleaser that I would just do everything for everyone all the time. If you let me, I will. So I think just really learning how to prioritize things that need to be done. A, does it need to happen right now? Is it
mm,
something that has to be at the top of the priority list? Or can I say, I want to accomplish this for you. Can I put it on my agenda to have done in the next 2 weeks? Or is this something that you need right now? So I think prioritizing is really big and just understanding what needs to be done right now versus what can maybe be pushed aside until later. I always saw it as
mm,
a failure if I didn't turn things around immediately.
mhm,
So I think that's been big. And then I would say if it's a small project that, an assistant manager can work on, it builds them up because they feel like, they are getting to contribute to the team. They've got a responsibility. And actually, it does a lot more good to delegate and give people opportunities to shine, I've really
mm,
learned, than to just take all these projects on myself and not utilize my team. So I really try to just, when I see things come in, just look at the project and say, is this something that I need to do? Or can I delegate this to someone who might be strong in this
mm.
area? And of course, I'll need to follow up later, but I think that's really helped me a lot.
As you're talking, my friend, I have this whole flash in my mind about, I heard this the other day, that the prize for aging is wisdom.
Mhm.
Mm.
Love
And
that.
right? I'm like, oh God, that feels like soul food. And as you evolved, becoming a mama, being a wife, leading this team, this growing team in your role.
Mhm.
How have you evolved through this process?
Oh, that's such a good question. I love that. Well, I think I said these words to you before we got on here, but I think just I have a famous quote, and I don't even know that it's necessarily perfectly fitting for this, but I'm going to say it anyway because
Hmm.
we're here at the table and we're saying the first thing that comes to our mind. I would say I always keep in mind to stay above it are words
Mm,
that I always have in my mind. So when you ask me how I've evolved, I would say that's a big one for me. I think I I really try not to let negativity or just life in general, obstacles that are in my way, I try to never let it affect me. So I
mm,
always tell myself, stay above it. I did that this morning. It just wasn't a great morning. And I had to come to work and say, Andrea, you've got to stay above it. You cannot let this affect
mm,
your entire day.
mm,
Whereas, once upon a time, it probably would have affected my entire day and my attitude. And so, yeah, I think that optimism is just key.
mm,
It's I truly believe that positivity paves the way for your entire life. Everything is such a mindset. And I
mm.
think positivity draws in great people that you can be surrounded by, opportunities you're putting in front of yourself. So I think just always keeping that positivity is really how I've evolved over the years.
And awareness. Like, I feel that
Mhm.
awareness doesn't get enough street cred because we feel we need to be perfect and have it all right. But girl, you can't fix the shit until you're aware of it.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And I know that I told you before we got on here, but I walked in this morning and I said to one of my coworkers, I said, you know, I've had a shit morning. I've had a shit morning, but I'm not going to let it get to me. I'm not
Mm.
going to let it affect me. I'm going to stay above it. And I even hope that those words to her are encouraging, that maybe the
Ah,
next time she's having a bad day, she has that same quote in her
yeah.
mind. But it's hard. Life is hard.
Oh, it can feel like a fucking army crawl.
Yes.
And especially in our digital world, right? Like, I loved, my friend, when we kicked off how you talked about you want to become very aware and intentional on the women that you surround yourself with.
Yes,
Because our world
absolutely.
that is so digital, so transactional, especially you as you lead a team, people want to text and they don't want to talk. And then the emails and the things and the social
Hmm.
worlds can just feel that everyone has it figured out but you, and it can be
Hmm.
exhausting. What?
Yes, and I
Yeah.
think like, you know, not I'm sorry to cut you off
No,
there. I
go.
was just thinking when you said that, what came to my mind is other mothers that we have in the workplace here, we embrace each other
Mm,
so much. We embrace each other and it helps tremendously because we are each other's backbone and we can lean on one another when we've had a rough morning or, my coworker's daughter broke her arm in two places yesterday and I was the first person she reached
mm.
out to, because she knew that I would understand and I love that we've developed these relationships here internally because I wouldn't survive without them some days, I swear.
Yeah, a hype circle, right? A hype circle.
Yes.
Yeah, I love
Yes.
that.
And I hope to grow that doing this.
Andrea, I you had said something that I loved so much about the power of our mindset and staying above it. And when we had connected in one of our beautiful calls, you said to me something so powerful that I still remember it. And it was about this small little micro tool that you started to do in your mornings. You're
Yes.
waking up, you got two young babies at home,
Mhm.
right? Then you're driving in to lead a team in the restaurant business. So listen, that ain't no cakewalk. And you would say, like, I was having all this anxiety as soon as I would
Mm.
crack open an eyelid. And it was this
Yes.
one tool that I started to use that really changed how I showed up. in
Mhm.
my mindset. Do you remember what that is?
Yes, I do. It's waking up before the rest of the household
Mhm.
has been crucial to my mental health personally. Like you just said, I would wake up to a screaming kid and launch out of bed and run to get the bottles and do all the things. And every morning started off very frantic.
Mm.
And it kind of was the trajectory of my entire day from that point on. I think I told you in our call, I was controlling my breathing on the way to work most days after dropping the kids off because my chest would feel so tight. So what's really helped me is just trying to be ahead, and it's worth that early alarm to just get up and make a cup of coffee and get a little workout in if I want to,
Mm.
or really whatever I can do to just be at peace, even if it's for 20 minutes before the kids are up. And I found that my mood with them was so much more improved because I had that time to myself. And so when they wake up, I feel better about focusing my attention on them and their needs because I've already given
Mhm.
myself that moment that I needed to get the day started.
You said two things there that I really stuck out to me, and it was the fact that it's 20 minutes.
Hmm.
We have tendency to think in this air quote guru world that you need to do an hour of the yoga and then make your kale smoothie and that. It can be flipping
Yeah.
20 minutes, 20 minutes, and you spend
Mhm.
more time than that scrolling the damn social feeds.
Yes.
20 minutes. And I also love when you said about the freedom to do what feels right to you in those 20 minutes. I feel
Hmm.
that, and I struggle with this too. As a type A girl, you're my spirit animal, both type A's.
Hmm. Yes.
That it needs to be so prescriptive that, okay, I got 20 minutes and I'm going to do da, 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 da.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, talk to me about that because I just saw you be like, yes, girl, there is freedom
I
in that.
I can relate to that so much, Megan. I That is still a struggle for me, I will be honest. That's something that I constantly have to work on because I'm very much the same as if I have 20 or 30 minutes of free time, I feel that I need to be doing something productive
Mm,
to prepare for the day or prepare for the next day or get ahead on work. I was guilty of it just this morning. I'll be honest. I got ahead on the work day, which is good, but I didn't really take that moment for myself to just sip a cup of coffee
mm.
or sit outside, listen to the birds chirp, read a book, do yoga if that's what you want to do. But I that's something I have to actively work on a daily basis. And I can relate to it so much as our brains are just like, we're not okay with just letting go and letting our brains rest. We just want to think about the next thing that needs to be done for everyone else other than ourselves.
As you're
So,
talking, my friend, I have to share this with you. May it touch your soul the way it did mine. Last week, because I'm right there with you, I it is a constant struggle for me to create space to hear myself in a very loud world,
mhm,
to create space that it doesn't need to be optimizing every single second. And I started doing these micro moments of silence. So, grabbing my coffee with no phone.
mhm,
It can be something as simple as walking the dog around the block with no phone. Or even this,
yes,
if I have to go to the grocery store, which is 10 minutes down the phone, no phone.
mhm.
Just these sort of little micro moments. And it's been a game changer.
I will say I really took that away from you at the
Oh,
conference. You
yeah?
you spoke about that of just putting your cell phone away. And I have really been trying to be intentional with that. And it does help. It helps so much to where I may just put my phone in our room and spend the
Mm,
entire evening without it, in the kitchen without it while we're doing family stuff. And It helps tremendously because it is a distraction. And when it's there, we constantly want to check it to make sure
Mm,
that we're not missing something. And I think there's something to be said about just pushing it aside and being okay with going on that walk down the road without it. Isn't it kind of scary? Why does that scare us?
I gotta tell you what, it sounds easy when you say it, but it's fucking hard.
It is. It
Fucking
is. And
hard.
I actually, something you just said stood out to me of being in the quiet.
Mm,
I sometimes my body just naturally starts to feel anxious when I
mm.
allow myself to sit in quiet. And I'm like, why is this hard to just let my brain and my body be silent right now? So that's something I have to actively work on as well, and just taking more of those moments because I think we shouldn't be afraid to just sit in the quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will tell you what has been a game changer for me. And I think we've talked about this. I've always struggled with therapy. I am
Oh, yes, you
stubborn.
did. Mhm.
When I don't want to talk about shit, I don't want to talk about shit. And traditional talk therapy, I've never really felt a connection to. But what has been therapy for me is a micro moment of silence with my coffee, like those 20 minutes of just freeing my thoughts with pen to paper and not even rereading it, but
Mhm.
just like talking myself through the anxious because I have struggled with high functioning anxiety my entire life. This constant stress in my
Mhm.
shoulders, this constant belly, this constant rumination, this constant gremlin chirping in my brain on all of
Mhm.
these different things. And it was amazing the freedom that just comes in a little pen to paper. I don't even reread it, doesn't even need to make sense to just release it. Do you do anything like that?
I do. I do. Actually, for me, it's jogging. It's
Mm.
going for a jog. I did it all weekend, and I was just telling a friend last night because she said, I need your motivation to run because I made a little post about it or something. And I said, this might sound kind of nerdy, but I love running because for the 20 or 30 minutes that I'm out on a run, which thank goodness we're to outdoor run season here in Michigan, it's just me and my body.
Mm.
And running is such a mental and physical challenge. You're in your head the whole time of like, I want to stop. Nope, don't stop. You can stop when you get to this point. You're talking to yourself in your head the entire time. So, what I love about it for me is that any outside stress that I have
Mm.
is gone, and all I can focus on is me and moving my body in that moment for those 20 to 30 minutes. And that is when I truly feel like my brain is just it's zen. And so I've really clung to that over the last few years, especially with having kids, just getting out of the house and going on that 30-minute run. And I come back and I swear, Megan, I'm like a different person when I get
Yeah.
back to the house. It's not that much time. Like you said, 20 minutes is all it takes.
Do you feel that that's also like your spiritual moment?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. I have actually gotten emotional on runs a
Mm,
couple of times to where I almost felt like I was gonna be brought to tears
mm,
just based on the song that I was maybe listening to
mhm.
in that moment while I was running and in my thoughts. And I think it's just really healthy to allow your mind to just go there. And
Yeah.
we go through everyday life and so many people never go to that place. And it's important to do that. And you just are in this moment with yourself. It's kind of hard to describe, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh, it is. It is. As you're talking, it gave me goosebumps actually because I know that feeling. Like I was just telling someone the other week that we think that this spiritual connection, or at least the way I was raised, is you had to go into a church
Mhm.
or a spiritual structure or whatever that looks like for you, but that you can create it in exactly what you just said and what feels right to you and in this moment of being outdoors and in silence and with you by you in these 20 minutes. And I
Mhm.
I feel that, Andrea, I have had some of the best sort of spiritual moments, just like you're talking about
Mhm.
in exactly that, in going out for a run for 20, 30 minutes. What you had said something so great that I want to unpack, which is some people never even go there, or they never even give them space to go, never even give themselves the space to go there. And it makes me flash to, 80% of us are on autopilot, going through the motions, what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
What's your advice to the person listening right now that is where I was, where you were, that is feeling that anxiety all the time, going through the motions, thinking to
Mhm.
themselves, there has to be more than this? What would you tell that person?
I would say that it's not going to happen overnight. I think that you have to make yourself a priority every day.
Mm,
And, maybe it starts with 5 minutes. Maybe that's all you can do is just sit outside for 5 minutes and just try to work on that every single day until it kind of becomes a part of your normal routine. And, I think asking for help is a lot of what it comes down to, communicating that you need help and talking to other people and just I just think having a community around you is
mm,
just the biggest things when I think
mm,
of, if as a mom or just, someone who has a lot on their plate, I think letting other people know that I need help. Hey, maybe I just need you to come watch my kids for a few hours so I can just get out of the house and do something for me and, being okay with doing that. So I would say make yourself a priority.
mm,
Something you said in one of your recent podcasts was just this is your life.
mm, mm,
You and I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you said something like it shouldn't just be what it is
mm,
and you're just muscling through every day. Like this is your one life and, I guess asking yourself the question, what do I need to do to start heading in the right direction? How can I really start to change my everyday routine to bring myself more happiness in this
mm,
life? What did somebody say to me? There's a quote, and I'm probably going to botch it, but he said, um, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always got.
mm.
And that's always stuck with me because if you want to get out of that situation, you have got to be willing to make some changes, whether it be if it's at work, talking to, your supervisor, letting them know you're overwhelmed. How can I, take a little bit off of my plate? How can I delegate? Asking for that help and that guidance, but you can't just keep muscling through every day or before you know it you're going to look back and say I wish I would have done things differently. So do it now.
Yeah. God, I love that. That just, as you were talking, it just made me flash to what you talked about earlier, back to the stay above it. The
Hmm.
power of your mindset, man. Oof.
It's a
It
big one.
it's a big one. What do you do to work on your mindset,
Hmm.
to work on, what you're digesting, what you're consuming, to empower yourself? Anything that you
Hmm.
do?
Yeah, I would say podcasts is big
Mm,
for me. Listening to yours, and I've got a couple other go-tos that it's just other like-minded people who are filling my mind with positive and motivating thoughts. So, typically if I do have that morning that feels stressful, my routine is as soon as I drop the kids off, I put on a
mm,
podcast. I don't listen to music often unless I'm just kind of in that mood. Of course
yeah.
I am sometimes, but Podcast has been huge for me. Really, I ever since 2020, it was really when I got into podcasts. I would say it must be COVID and just needing to hear from other people and just feeling like so isolated during that time and yearning for human interaction
Yeah.
really drew me to podcasts. And I would say that's helped me a ton because it just usually refocuses me once I listen to an inspiring person talk. I would say networking more, going
Mhm.
to Michigan Restaurant Association events, going to that conference. Those are things that I really have made a priority because I feel so uplifted
Mm,
leaving those sorts of events because you realize that we're all in this together. We are all doing the damn thing every
yeah.
single day. And it's just something so refreshing. So for me, I think people, I I love being surrounded by people. And I think that's why I've always thrived in the hospitality industry is because
Mhm.
people bring me joy. I love jogging in a downtown area where there's just people everywhere. I like working in a busy coffee shop that's I'm surrounded by people. All of those things I think really help my mindset because you feel a part of something. You don't feel alone in
Mm,
your thoughts. It's like we're all out here grinding.
yeah. Yeah, there's
So,
something freeing about it, right? Like,
yes,
"Oh, wait, I'm not the only one."
correct. Absolutely. So I
I
would say that's a big one for me. And, I really struggle to dive into lengthy books at this
mm,
point in my life because usually by the end of the day, I'm so tired with the kids and everything. But I really cling to just great articles,
yeah,
just really good articles. They're short and sweet and have a good message, and you can look up something specific if it's a feeling that you're having that day and find other people out there that are talking about similar things. So I would say those couple of things have been really helpful to me and my mindset, aside from just carving out time for
mm.
yourself.
I was so happy to hear you talk about being intentional on the content you consume because I have
Yes.
to tell you, girl, 8 years ago, when I had that mental breakdown, which can feel like
Mhm.
8 minutes or 8 hot seconds, depending on the day, is that the first thing that I did was I got intentional on what I listened to. And to your point, I
Mhm.
started to listen to podcasts that really elevated me or YouTube videos or little
Mhm.
nuggets. And it was amazing on how it started to change what I looked for. And there is science, my friend, that
Oh yeah.
yeah, that backs it up that what you consume for 3 minutes, whether that's an email or social or music you're listening to, will impact you for 7 to 8 hours.
100%. I could not agree with that more. I recently called my husband out on that because he was in this 90s grunge stage of music, which don't get me wrong, I love some 90s grunge, but it was all he was consuming for weeks and weeks. And I finally said to him, you have got to switch up what you are listening to because you're so right. Everything that we consume, it it's putting that message into our brains. And what is that message that we're putting in there? Is
Yeah.
it angry? Is it positive? Is it uplifting? Is it sad? If you're listening to sad music, you can shed a tear or two if you want to because it
Yeah.
puts you in that mindset. So I 100% agree. I think you have to be intentional with what you're consuming.
As you were talking, you can take this back to your honey. You can actually, you know what? Share. I know you're going to share this episode with
Yeah.
him so we can hype his lady. And this is for you, your honey, right here. I had a friend of mine that was listening to DMX before he would go into the office.
Ooh.
I know that's a little hard. It's a little hard. And he said to me, Meg, I had no idea how much this was impacting me. He's like, I would come into the office like hot, like ready to go. And I didn't realize the what it was doing for other people around me. And then I changed what I was listening to. He said, I actually took that drive for silence to hear my thoughts, to think
Mhm.
about how I wanted to show up in the day and my calls and my meetings. He said, and it changed really everything, like the way people
Wow.
reacted to me. the way my colleagues, the way my boss, the way that everyone reacted to me. And I thought,
Yeah.
wow, that's to the power of what you listen to.
And I love what you just said too, because don't, as a parent especially, don't disregard just sitting in silence here and
Mm,
there as well. I sometimes I get to where I'm going to and I'm like, I drove in silence the entire way here. But to me, in that moment, that's what I needed.
needed. Yeah.
Because that was maybe the 20 minutes that I got to just be.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I think there's a total science to all of that.
My friend, I want to ask you because you've brought this up several times and I love this. And it's something that's such a passion point of mine. It's something that I think is so needed, especially, here we are, March, International Women's Month, the power of hype women. For our
Yes. Oh.
listener that is listening, that might not have a group of hype women at work, that is feeling alone in all the things, how would you
Mm.
recommend that she builds a tribe around her?
Gosh, that's such a good question because that would be a tough situation to be in. I am sensitive to that person because personally, I am so fortunate to be surrounded by the women in this company that I am. I say it all the time. It's not just moms, but just women in leadership.
Mm,
And we are a strong team. And it would be tough not to have that. I would say if you don't have that in the workplace, I think, seeking out groups through, something like this or reaching
mhm,
out to me and saying, "Hey, I heard you talking on the podcast and let's connect." It's someone to talk to. So I think building your circle, I know you always reference this podcast as a tribe. And I think the
mm,
more we can just connect with one another and lean on each other, that can be done from afar. It takes a Zoom or a phone call or a text or anything to just say, "Hey, I'm here if you ever want to talk." And, I think social media, there's so many groups that you can be a part of now to just meet like-minded people who are going through the same thing. So that's always an option. But it's important to be surrounded by strong women in leadership.
mm. As you were talking, and thank you for the offer to connect with our tribe and for being a part of
Hmm.
our tribe. Guys, I'm going to link Andrea's Instagram handle in the show notes. So please connect with her. And my friend, as you were talking, it just made me flash to the power that can happen when we go back to talking about what we intentionally consume on reaching out to the person like you did with me when they say something that resonates with you and you're like, hey, that was really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Or you're in a
Hmm.
meeting or you hear someone say something to reach out, to not just think, oh, I'll get to it. Oh, that'll be nice. She's going to think I'm stupid. I'm not doing that. No, take a beat and reach out.
I'm still learning that. I mean, even reaching out to you for this opportunity, I never do that sort of thing. And this has
Mm,
been so eye-opening to just, why can't we do more of
yes.
that? I have something to say. Can we connect? And it's just being willing to raise your hand, like you've said, and say, "Hey, I have something to say." And also, I had another quick thought because although I work with a lot of other women in leadership that I
Mm,
really lean on, in the position that I'm in specifically, I'm primarily surrounded by men.
mm-hmm,
So I work very closely with men at the level that I'm at and no other women that are in a position similar to mine. And one thing I have found for the person listening that works in a male dominated environment is really like making sure to keep your confidence when you
mm,
are, at that meeting table with other men and really just being confident in yourself and letting them know what your needs are and calling things out if you feel like it's crossed some sort of boundary with
mm,
you. Me and my partner are so amazing with that with each other and he's my counterpart and he's, a male, and I let him know and vice versa if, something he said or did, kind of crossed a boundary with me. And I think that's super important too, is to just vocalize that and be okay with it.
As you were talking, God, that's so powerful. It just made me flash to this conversation I had with a woman a couple weeks ago at a female leadership conference. And she had said to me, my boss said something to me the other month, and I have been fuming about it. There's this resentment and anger that begins to build when you start creating a narrative in your
Mm,
mind. And she had said to me, Andrea, he told me that I was too kind. And I said to her, well, did you ask him what he meant by it?
mhm.
To give examples, to not just to take it and internalize it, but say, hey, can you give me some examples on what you mean here by
Yeah,
that? Because there's so much freedom in not just assuming, but asking. Did you ask? And
absolutely.
yeah, and as you were just talking about the collaboration with your partner, it sounds like there's some really great communication there.
So much. And I'm so fortunate. I'm just the men in my life that I'm surrounded by, I'm truly surrounded by the best, and I could not be more grateful. I mean, I have had so much mentorship from men in my life, and but yeah, my partner that I referenced specifically, we've learned if we're going to work so closely together and be in the positions that we're in, we've got to be willing to have the hard conversations
Mm,
too. It's not always easy, but at
yeah.
the end of the day, we always come out of the situation in lock sync with each other. And I think that, those conversations have to be had sometimes. And I think as women, we tend to be submissive sometimes. And, we don't always stand up for ourselves in moments where we really need to. So I would also recommend that to the women listening who are in that male dominated environment.
One last question for you, my friend. Isn't it amazing? I can't believe we've been on this for almost an hour. 60 minutes on a treadmill feels like 60 damn days, but
I could talk to you all day,
oh
Megan.
God, girl, preach. I knew this was going to be soul food. I knew it this morning at 5 a.m. in my house, goat having my morning coffee. One last question for you, my girl. What would your advice be to your younger self?
Oh gosh. I would say to my younger self, I think I have to go back, and I may sound a little redundant, but you know how Facebook shows us some of our old
Yes.
posts that we made?
Yes.
I sometimes I don't like that feature, but it kind of tells you who you were once
Mm,
upon a time, right? And to me, I would say when I see a lot of the things that I was saying, it was very negative,
mm,
very, very negative. And I try to say this to our young employees who seem to just kind of be muscling through their stress with school and classes and work. And I would say to just keep a positive attitude and stay above it, like we've talked about a lot in this podcast, but just knowing I would say positivity will get you so far, Andrea.
mm, mm.
Just keep a positive mindset, and naturally everything else in life will kind of fall into place, because I'm a firm believer that optimism brings great people that you're surrounded by. It brings great opportunities in the workplace because people are drawn to positivity.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I think it's what you attract. You attract what you put out. And I think at that point in my life, I attracted a lot of negative people in my life. And, now when I look at the people I'm surrounded by, it's just like, gosh, I am surrounded by the most incredible people. But it's because of my mindset that I drew those sorts of people in. So I think that's what I would tell myself, just
Oh,
not stressing and staying positive.
oh, that's powerful, girl. That is a powerful way to leave this kitchen table conversation. My friend, Andrea, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing your words with the world, for building a tribe in every room that you are in, for advocating for women and humans in your life so passionately, so authentically, and for offering your hand to our tribe. I feel so grateful to call you a friend. Thank you.
Same here. And thank you for just constantly filling my mind with
Mhm.
positive words of encouragement and everything that you do and the impact that you've had on so many people with your words. I look up to you so much, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to, you welcomed me with open arms without a second thought. And I really, really appreciate you for that.